Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, what is going on in the world of college basketball, college football, baseball, recruiting? We're going to talk a lot about it here these next 2 hours. Rob Browne here on the Monday edition of Sidelines. We're here every Monday through Saturday. Check us out, www.sidelines.live. Also, 680thefan.com, the podcast part over in Atlanta. If you miss us live, starting to get on radio stations as we're building the Sidelines Southern Sports Network. Kicks 96.3 down in Alexander City, Lake Martin. Also WLIV 104.7 up in Cookeville, Tennessee, up on the Cumberland Plateau. But we are building it one station at a time. We're here to deliver you sports news. That's what we do. That's who we are. And you can follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. All guest driven, coaches, players, current, former, media personalities, great journalists. True grit journalism. That's what we love to have on here. The great writers, typically the best guests because they think about what they're saying because they have written it. And look, man, let's get started. John Hartwell joins us right now, the AD, and we're going to talk some college basketball. John, weekend, we had college basketball, of course, college, the NFL playoffs, which were exciting. I hated to see Dallas lose. I love the NFL to watch anywhere there's an Auburn player, but I grew up a Cowboys fan, and they got beat. It's an old school type game by San Francisco, but still some exciting play left. There's still a franchise worth over $5 billion, so losing pays with Dallas. It's crazy to watch it, but let's look in here at what's going on in college basketball, man. Alabama on top of the SEC. After that, you've got Tennessee, Auburn, Texas A&M lost to Kentucky at home in Lexington Saturday. And then you've got number 5 Kentucky in the league. Is SEC basketball, when you compare it to what year in and year out is the best conference, the ACC, is it better now, top to bottom, than the ACC? I still think the ACC tradition-wise is the best, but when you don't see North Carolina and you don't see Duke in the top 25 rankings and they're struggling, what does that say about changes in college basketball besides that 2 legendary coaches have retired, Roy Williams from UNC and Coach K at Duke, along with Jay Wright at Villanova, but those 2 in the ACC, it's a hell of a hole to fill, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think it goes beyond a comparison of the SEC and the ACC, Rob. And I think that's one of the things that endears so many people to college basketball. Obviously, football is king in the South and SEC country. But in basketball, you have so much parity. I mean, you got 5 guys on the court at one time. You know, you have a guy or 2 get hot and you know, you can't say unequivocally that literally any night, any team can beat another. Not necessarily true. But look, just over the last 4 or 5 days, Loyola Marymount goes in to Spokane and beats Gonzaga. It ends the longest, 75, 76 game home winning streak. So you have that happen. Then last night, yesterday afternoon in Houston, you have a Temple team that's like 11-9 going into the game, goes into the Tillman Fertitta Center there on the campus of the University of Houston, and they upset number 1 ranked Houston and Kelvin Sampson. So you've got a lot of parity in college basketball, and I think as we get ready to turn the calendar into February, the home stretch down towards March Madness, you're going to see some more of this parity play out. But, you know, you make a great point. You look at the SEC standings and Alabama's there at the top, followed closely by Tennessee, Auburn, and Texas A&M, each with only 1 conference loss. But what's crazy is you look down at the bottom of the league, and I know Saturday in Fayetteville, as I read yesterday, Wally Hall is so eloquently put in the in the Little Rock newspaper, a battle for the basement, and Arkansas beats Ole Miss. But you've got 4 teams on the flip side of the top end of the standings. You've got 4 teams that only have 1 win: South Carolina, LSU, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. So you take the top half, and then you take that middle section, and I think it's a really good league. But it'll be interesting to see what happens down the stretch. And this year's March Madness is going to be a whole lot of fun, because there's a lot of teams out there that could potentially win it, culminating in the Final Four in Houston, which I think I said a couple of weeks ago, I would be shocked if the University of Houston does not advance to the Final Four. Would give them a little bit of advantage, a home court advantage in the Final Four. But it's a really exciting college basketball season, and I think we're going to see a lot of upsets come. Put it this way, not that we condone college betting, although it is legal in some states now. You might as well take a match to your money if you're betting on college basketball, because it can be all over the board.
It can be. And you think about Houston, I was looking at the rankings. I mean, they're going to change when they come out tonight. You've got Kansas, Purdue, these teams that are, Purdue every year, they get ranked really high, but they don't close like Kansas. Of course, Kansas is the defending national champion. And I got to ask you this. So many people said when Mark Emmert awarded the national championship trophy to Kansas, when they won the national championship, he said, congratulations to the Kansas City, what did he call them? The Wildcats or something. He couldn't even get the name right. It was almost like he couldn't even stand to give them the national championship trophy. This investigation with Kansas and other schools, Auburn was one of them, Alabama was one of them. There were a lot of schools around the country. I think it cost Sean Miller his job at Arizona. What is going on? What are they ever going to take away that sword of Damocles that's hanging over the top of Bill Self's head in the Kansas basketball program? I mean, do they have to worry about holding on to that national championship? Because Kansas is an elite basketball program, and all they do is win. Bill Self is absolutely an amazing coach, but what do you think will happen?
Yeah, there's always a thunderstorm cloud over his head, though. I mean, they have, and he's sort of like Houdini in that there have been a lot of allegations, but in terms of definitively saying, hey, Bill Self was aware this happened or that, and they have, again, I go back, I said, and all of these things that are these scenarios that we've talked about the last few weeks, the true winners are the attorneys. Yeah. And between the University of Kansas attorneys and those that Bill Self has brought on, they've just, it seems like they've been able to kick the proverbial can down the road, and it hasn't really been addressed. Now it'll be interesting to see when there finally is a judgment day, how stiff any penalties for anything that they're able to substantiate are, because in a lot of ways, transgressions that have occurred are now made legal under the shroud of NIL. So that poses an interesting thing. But again, even with Kansas, you look at them, they get run out of their own arena the other day by the TCU Horned Frogs. I think it was like 83-60. And wow, you talk about an athletics program that's got it rolling. And I know they got derailed a little bit, or a lot in the national championship game. But the TCU Horned Frogs have got it going in Fort Worth on multiple fronts.
Well, they had a good basketball run last year in the tournament. I mean, remember that. And they have what's very important. They have a ton of money with that school. And your perspective, I think, is really unique. We talked just a minute ago about Gonzaga, the 75-game winning streak. And granted, they're not playing an SEC or ACC type schedule night in and night out. But we watch late night basketball, and you do, and it's fun to do it. You see these teams out in the Pacific Northwest. There's good basketball played out there, and you don't want to have to play these teams on their home courts. And so what happens is this narrative is out there based on what happens in the NCAA tournament of, the only good basketball is in the ACC or the Big Ten, used to be the Big East or whatever, now the SEC, whatever. But people all over the country emphasize basketball, Pac-12, you name the league. But what's the most different couple of things that you notice when you watch basketball from the Mountain West Conference and versus, say, the SEC or the ACC?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rob, and I'd be remiss if I didn't give a little plug for my previous league for the Mountain West Conference.
Yeah,
because you've got I think 5 teams right now in the top 50, 55 in the RPI, being San Diego State, who's perennially been very good. New Mexico with the head coach. Some people don't recognize or realize this, but they certainly recognize the name Richard Pitino in his second year at New Mexico. Yeah. They went undefeated in the non-conference schedule, beat some really good teams. They've lost a couple of games in the Mountain West now. The Utah State Aggies, which I'm very familiar with, they are 16-4 now and 5-2 in the league. Nevada is having a really good year. And a school that a lot of people think of as a football school, but they've been really good the last handful of years in basketball, and that's Boise State, Coach Leon Rice. They had a tremendous game. You talk about late night basketball. It was a 10 p.m. tip here in the Central Time Zone, so 11 o'clock on the East Coast Friday night. But it was a overtime thriller in the Pit, and Albuquerque in New Mexico beat Boise, I think, by 84-82, something like that. So really good basketball. But I'll tell you what I think the difference is, and people are going to laugh at this because they're going to say, well, you say the same thing about football. I think the physicality of SEC basketball, ACC basketball, Big Ten basketball versus, West Coast Conference, which Gonzaga, BYU are in. Obviously, BYU's transitioning to the Big 12. But the Pac-12, the Mountain West, I think that is the difference. Skill, pure basketball skill, those leagues are absolutely on a par, if not maybe better. Mm-hmm. The physicality of the SEC and ACC and Big Ten, especially when you get into tournament format where you're going to have to, on multiple weekends, win 2 games in a 72-hour period, that physicality starts to play in there.
Yeah, and you think about the pure basketball, free throw shooting, fundamentals, playing great defense, running your system, whatever the coaches have you running, and being able to do that's fun to watch. And that's one of the things about women's basketball versus men's basketball is the women's game is probably more of a pure game across the board. Now, you've got a few of the girls that can dunk now, and that's pretty rare. But I remember watching Joe Champy and Pat Summitt, and you look at Van Chancellor at Ole Miss. Just the process, the way they played basketball, it was the pure form of the game. And now we talked about this, you and I did, and Matt Dean last week on Sidelines. It used to be everybody wanted the 7-foot big man in the middle, 2 forwards, but and they put their back to the basket. Now the teams are made up of 6'8" guys that are tweeners, and you being a basketball player, played at the Citadel, running up and down the court, dunking it, and it's the Sports Center highlights. I mean, who doesn't want to be on Sports Center? You and I would love to be on Sports Center. Look at this show. They're talking college basketball, but that is what I see. And then you get into the NCAA tournament, John, and you play against some team from the Mountain West or from a conference like St. Peter's that have been together for 4 or 5 years. They're a team. They're more mature. And you may have some 18 and 19-year-old guys that are 5-star studs, but they're not a team yet. And it really shows up in the tournament, doesn't it?
Yeah, you make a great point there. And having a veteran team, regardless of the sport, it gives them an advantage because they can weather the storms. And especially in basketball, if you get down 10 or 12 points in the first half, they don't push the panic button or anything. They said, hey, this is a 40-minute game. Let's work our way back. Let's cut it to 6 or 8 at halftime, and then, cut it to 4 at the 10-minute mark and see how it plays out. So I want to go back to your point about women's basketball, because I absolutely agree. The men's game is played above the rim now. And so strategy is still important to some extent, but a lot of times skill is able to overcome some deficits or deficiencies in strategy. On the women's side, still primarily below the rim. And from a basketball purist standpoint, the X's and O's are much more evident in the women's game.
Yeah.
Not to discount strategy and skills and fundamentals in the men's game. And I think I made this comment a couple of weeks ago. When you talk about fundamentals and so many teams, and I'll also say this is something that I think has migrated from West Coast basketball east now, and especially to the Southeast, because you used to not see many international players on SEC or ACC rosters. You'd see them on Big East, you'd see them in the Pac-12, Mountain West, some, but you're seeing more now because a lot of times those international players, especially the Eastern European and the Australian players, are much more sound fundamentally than a lot of the American players.
Yeah, John, hold those thoughts. Yeah, we're going to go to a break here, and I want to come back and talk about that because they spend typically a full day every week on nothing but fundamentals. We'll be right back. John Hartwell.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
John Hartwell, let's just put things in perspective. Back in your playing days as a legend down in Mobile, the port city at UMS, then to the Citadel. When you were at the Citadel, everybody thinks military, they automatically equate discipline. But repetition is the mother of all skill. How many shots did you take in practice versus how many shots you took on your own trying to get better? Free throw shooting. We used to do it and I wasn't in basketball. I didn't play in high school. I played, growing up, but I didn't play in high school. But we practiced over and over and over. I had a tennis coach and instructor taking lessons one time. He told me I could not leave until I hit 100 shots from the far back right corner to the opposite corner without it going out of bounds, and hit this towel that he had put there. My mother was waiting on me to leave, and she was like, my God, when's it going to stop? But, man, he made a point to me. Do it and do it right.
Yeah, you talk about repetition being a key to success, and it is. Yeah. And I'll have to tell you a little personal aside story here as it relates to the Citadel. And people, say, gosh, you went to the Citadel, you were, marched and carried a rifle and did all that stuff. And I said, yeah, the only guy that was probably less militarily inclined than I was, that was a classmate of mine at the Citadel, was a name familiar to many college football fans throughout the SEC, Lance Thompson, who is on the staff, Alabama, Auburn, South Carolina, He's made his right, Georgia Tech, Central Florida. So I tell people, I said, I was not the least militarily inclined guy out of my class. Hey, Lance Thompson on the football team. But anyway, all that being said, going back to repetition, I managed to find a way literally in the second semester of my freshman year to convince my company commander that I didn't have to go to drill on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which was from like 11 to 11:45 for every cadet in the Corps of Cadets. Instead, I got to go over and shoot free throws, and how I pulled that off, I'm not sure. But yeah, 100 free throws every day, and that's again, fundamentals and repetitions. Some of those things get lost today. Shoot, now you got kids who have mental performance coaches who visualize the ball going through the net.
Yeah,
mentally. Hey, I still go, you got to put those two fingers through the net when you release the ball. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I go to a lot of Grizzlies games at the FedEx Forum in Memphis. And when you watch these NBA players, and there's always a European or just a foreign player or two on every team, the big guys, it's amazing the ease with which they shoot, and it's follow through. But it's just like watching a great golfer, a great tennis player. It's the follow through, but they're so good that you don't notice, and then you look at the final score and you see, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Ja Morant with 35, 40, 50 points, and you're like, I thought he had like 23, but they are so good because they do it. What did Michael Jordan say? I love that line. You will miss 1,000% of the shots that you never take. And
Absolutely.
he talk about all the great game-winning clutch baskets that he or Paxson had, whatever, for the Bulls, but you don't talk about all the misses that he had. And everybody thinks
if you don't put the shot up, it's never going to go in. So you might as well shoot it. And great shooters a lot of times say, hey, I've shot myself into a slump, and I'm going to shoot myself out of a slump. So that's hey, I got to ask you one quick question, because you made a Ja Morant reference there. Are we going to arrange a cage match between Sterling Sharp and Ja's dad after the little skirmish the other night in L.A. During the game? That was pretty wild.
Between him and who's dad?
Yeah, Ja Morant's dad got into it. Sterling Sharp was courtside, and
really?
There was a verbal altercation there. So.
Yeah, I was thinking it'd be one of the balls, LaMelo and that. I mean, but no, Sterling Sharp. Wow, I'm surprised, but I think Ja's dad does go to every game. He's there for everything. What's interesting is Paul Tudor Jones, hedge fund manager, very wealthy, successful man from Memphis, University of Virginia graduate. It's the Paul Tudor Jones Arena at Charlottesville, University of Virginia. And his dad, I hope he's still living. If he is, he's about 95. He's courtside at every Grizzlies home game. Does not miss them. I mean, he's at every single one of them. But of course, Paul Tudor Jones did not play college basketball. But and you talk about that. I want to dig into that. But these dads that are there at every game, and they do inject themselves into the story. But Ja Morant seems like a level-headed guy. He is a great shooter. And I'm not saying that guys like him were on every team, but when you and I were growing up, you had shooters, guys that could drain it. They were averaging 20 and 25 points a game. Name me anybody that has a shooter like that. And if you do, you get into the NCAA tournament and you get that guy on a streak, gets hot, it'll kill you, because everybody, talk about this for layman, because I'm not a basketball coach and you really are per se. The absence of the big men, and if you do find the big guy, he can run up and down the court. I mean, I remember Yao Ming, it was 8'7", 400 pounds. He wasn't the most mobile guy. He was huge. I don't think they won any championships, did they, with Houston or wherever he ended up. But now you've got guys like the Kevin Durant, who is athletic, what is he, six? Is he 6'11", 6'10", whatever? But they can do everything. And Jabari Smith in his rookie season with the Houston Rockets, who played at Auburn. And then another Auburn guy, rookie, Walker Kessler. I mean, Walker is a 7'1"? And, man, he is athletic. I saw him last year in the Auburn-Tennessee game, got a steal at midcourt, stole it, dribbled the length of the court, and scored on a layup like a guard would do. That's more what we see now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you talk about Walker Kessler, and he's probably as close to a traditional postman as you see, and he's already proven his value in his rookie season in the NBA with the Utah Jazz, just with his shot blocking ability, and not just the shots that he blocks, but the shots that he alters just because of his wingspan and his timing with being able to block shots. But he can also be a threat offensively and is a really good rebounder too. And like you said, you know, the days of the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar hook shot and things like that and going block to block in the post just have kind of disappeared. And part of that goes back to your reference earlier about SportsCenter. The SportsCenter reference is, you know, that a drop step move in the post for 2 points, kissing it off the glass doesn't get on SportsCenter. It's the dynamic dunk that makes it to SportsCenter, and that's what kids watch today.
Yeah, no, you're right. And just think about how mundane Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, whatever, the hook shot, kissing the glass, going in. I mean, can you imagine SportsCenter trying to pass that off as, check out these highlights, off the glass, Jabbar. It's not. I mean, they want the 6'8" guy running the court, 94 feet, full sprint, and just taking it and doing the tomahawk dunk. And you're right. That's what it is. And that's why basketball, if in the NCAA tournament, I've done all kind of scenarios, and I've won several times the office pool by winning it. And I've always put them in, like my dogs, they pick every team that has an animal mascot automatically. There's all kind of things. And then it's the lady in the back that does all the receivable, accounting stuff, that doesn't watch any basketball, that wins the thing because she's not so emotional when she makes the picks. But I just really believe, and we're seeing it more and more, the teams that have been together 4 or 5 years, they do really well in the tournament. And of those 64 or 68 bids, 34 of them, or 31, whatever, are automatic bids. The rest are at large, what have you. And, to me, for anyone that doubts the, I guess the sensibility of the logic of going from 4 teams to 12 in the college football playoff, just look at the interest. And John, I don't have the TV, numbers here in front of me, but go back to that 79 national championship, Michigan State and Larry Bird against Michigan State and Magic Johnson against Larry Bird and Indiana State. That one, for some reason, March Madness of 1979, got everybody hooked. And granted, those are 2 Hall of Fame players, but it was just such an incredible story. And you look at when we went from 16 to 32 to 64 to now 68. I mean, I don't know. Does it need to be bigger? But all I know is that as it's grown, you've drawn the interest of every out of 357 eligible schools to go to the NCAA tournament. More schools and fan interest in college basketball has exploded because more people know they have a chance. And for a lot of them, just getting to the tournament is the big deal. A school like Kentucky, it's all about winning the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, all you got to look at, St. Peter's last year, Loyola of Chicago, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe a couple more years than that. But just the exposure that they got, obviously those schools not only got there, but they advanced a couple of rounds as well. Yeah. But you can't put a price on the exposure for those institutions, not just what it does for their basketball program or the athletic department, but for the entire institution, excuse me. But, I think, and this is where kind of the tug of war is, because you've heard people talk about, it needs to expand to, 96, whatever that may be. And you made reference to the automatic bids, the 31, 32 automatic bids from every conference. And where that tug of war is the Power 5 schools primarily wanting to get more representation and saying, hey, we need more at-larges, because they feel like from an RPI perspective and things like that, strength of schedule, that would benefit them in the selection process.
Yeah.
Whereas the automatic bids that are already there, and you can argue all you want to about strength of schedule or anything else, but the Atlantic Sun champion, the Northeast Athletic Conference champion, all of these leagues have that automatic bid, and quite frankly, that's what drives all of the excitement and enthusiasm at individual conference tournaments throughout early March. And I think that's a good thing. I absolutely supported expanding the CFP from 4 to 12. I do not support expanding the NCAA tournament, because if you're going to go to 96, why don't you just say, okay, all 356, and we're going to whittle it down. Everybody has a chance to participate. That would render the regular season moot. That doesn't make sense. So.
I do. I agree with you. Hey, Jimmy Hyams joins us right now from Knoxville, longtime sports writer for the Knoxville News Sentinel, and on a sports animal every day. Does a 4-hour sports show. Knows Tennessee, SEC, college football, basketball, baseball, as well as anybody in the country. And Jimmy, we've been talking about college basketball with John Hartwell and I in this first segment, and just the SEC. Is the SEC now top to bottom? Has it passed the ACC? And now John's argument was it's not even about that. And I look here at Tennessee with Rick Barnes. The Vols are 6-1 in the conference. They get that loss a week ago Saturday to Kentucky at home. But with Rick Barnes, Tennessee is going to be in the hunt for the championship every year. How good is this Tennessee team, and what is it that stands out right now, say, that makes them potentially better than last year's squad?
What stands out is your defense. They have an outstanding defensive team. They lead Ken Palm's defensive efficiency rating, led that for 8 or 9 weeks in a row. They went into the game against LSU with the number 1 ranked 3-point defense in the country. Their 2-point shooting, their overall defense, I think, may have been number 1 also as far as field goal percentage. And defensively, one, they communicate, but secondly, they have multiple players that can guard multiple positions. And when you can do that and you can switch off, and you got a guy like Josiah Jordan-James who could guard the point or the post, that makes you really special on defense. So that's number 1. The second thing is when they shoot well, they're hard to beat. And they've had some moments where they had some lulls. They'll have a 3 or 4 minute scoreless drought there, but when they shoot it well, it's really hard to beat them. So I like this team. My only concern about them is when they get into a shooting slump. There are teams that do it around the country. I get that, but that's the only Achilles heel for this team, and the scoring droughts that they incur. But again, when they shoot it well, like they did at LSU, they're hard to beat.
Well, they are, and you go on the road in the SEC and win. That's almost like a 2 for 1. It's difficult to do it. John Hartwell jumping here with Jimmy Hyams talking Tennessee basketball.
Yeah, Jimmy. Good morning, Jimmy. Good to see you. We were talking about fundamentals earlier, and that's one of the things. If you look at Coach Barnes throughout his career, he has been able to recruit at a high level, he and his staff, but he's also very fundamentally engaged too, and his teams reflect that. And I think that's something that's lost on some teams today. And I give Nate Oates some of the same credit. Everything that Alabama does when they get on those runs is driven from the defensive end. Yeah, they get it out and transition and go, but it's driven by what they do on the defensive end. And I think that makes those two, Alabama and Tennessee, I think not only are going to finish the season right there at the top of the SEC, but I think those are the two teams when I look at them that have the best chance of advancing to Houston to the Final Four.
I agree with you. I see more flaws and more inconsistency in the other teams. Look, Kentucky, the night it beat Tennessee, that's a pretty darn good basketball team.
Yeah.
But the night they lost at home to South Carolina, they weren't very good at all. So, yeah, I think you're right about that. I think those are the ones I like the best. If Arkansas got Nick Smith back, and I really don't know if they will, then that might change the complexion of that team because he's such a great player.
Yeah, Jimmy, can you hold that thought real quick? I want to come back and talk about that. That's a great point about Arkansas right after this quick commercial message.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Times you were making great points about Arkansas with Nick Smith if he's coming back and whatever, and that's a team that right now is still ranked in the top 25, and they are 2-5 in the SEC. People have a lot of hope or just faith that they're going to turn it around like they did last year.
Yeah, and we'll see if they do. Again, if they get Nick Smith back, look out. But I do think this, and they had that, was it a 5-game losing streak in the conference where they finally over the weekend, but they still have some pretty good pieces. But boy, you give them Nick Smith, and I think it changes things. And so we'll see what happens with Arkansas. But you can't get too far behind in this deal, because if you do, and Nick Smith doesn't come back until they're like 2 weeks left in the season, you may be out of the picture by then. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think Musselman's a really good coach who still has some good talent. So we'll see how they fare.
Yeah, and you look at Tennessee. Since Rick Barnes got there, Tennessee has beaten Kentucky more than any other school, I think 76 times in the SEC. Honestly, you could take a whole bunch of schools in SEC basketball and combine their all-time wins, and they don't equal 76. It's an amazing rivalry, and that a lot of people don't get that Tennessee-Kentucky rivalry. It's a border war, but Tennessee just plays their absolute best typically when they play Kentucky. And you look around the SEC, the rest of the schedule, and I'm looking at Auburn at 6-1, but their schedule is going to get a lot tougher. How do you gauge Tennessee going forward? Because, when people say, well, your schedule's front end loaded, or it's easier on the front end, it's going to be a lot harder on the back end. Once a team gets into that winning mindset, they're in that gear. It doesn't matter who they're playing. If they play the same, and keep getting better, they get a chance every night out.
Yeah, I think Tennessee's fine with their upcoming schedule. And they got Georgia coming up Wednesday. Then they play Texas in that Big 12 that's a non-conference game. But I think their schedule's conducive to them making a run for this thing. I do think Alabama's the best team in the league. A lot of people feel like Alabama and Tennessee have separated themselves among the SEC teams. Maybe so. The Kentucky game gives me a little bit of pause right there, but and I think Auburn's really good. So not quite. I don't think it's the best team Bruce Pearl's had, but it's still a really team. So I'll be interested how Tennessee fares going forward. But I think their schedule is I don't know that I think it's tremendously harder down over the next 2/3 of the SEC season. I think they've played some pretty good teams already.
Yeah, and they look. I mean, Rick Barnes, again, his 17 years at Texas, long time at Clemson before that. He's won everywhere he's been, and he's got to be the winningest or one of the winningest coaches in school history everywhere he's been. Guy out of Hickory, North Carolina, or Winston-Salem, whatever, is amazing. And I don't think he's close to retiring. People, I mean, he looks like he loves what he's doing. John Hartwell, jump back in here with Jimmy Hyams.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's important here, and you see this every year, teams who peak too early, and there's a variety of factors for that. We talked a couple of weeks ago about teams that have a lot of freshmen or have freshmen who play, a vital role in that team. And if they play a lot of minutes, they're playing more games as a as a college freshman than they did as a high school senior, and they sometimes hit a wall mid-February. It's those coaches who can navigate that lull period, because every team's going to have it at some point. Doesn't always equate to, a losing streak or anything like that. But to have the teams peak come late February, early March into the conference tournament run and March Madness too. And, I'm going to switch sports for just a second to give an analogy here. Look at Ole Miss baseball last year. They were dead to rights prior to the SEC tournament. They catch fire in the SEC tournament and then win a national championship. So it's all about peaking at the right time, and it'll be interesting to see and again, that's not necessarily a talent thing. That's a coaching and a personnel management situation, which again, I go back to Rick Barnes. He's been doing it for a long time. He understands those ebbs and flows, and those coaches that can do that are going to have success come March.
Yeah, and as far as Tennessee's concerned, there were some folks that were wondering earlier, they peaked too soon, and then they lost to Kentucky, and it's like, aha. Well, we still got a lot more to play, right, in this season. And so your analogy of Ole Miss baseball is a really good one. Conversely, I think of Ole Miss football last year, and they had a great they lost 5 in a row. So you never know about – and one thing about the freshman wall as far as that, and I do think that's real. Tennessee has one freshman that's really contributing right now, one. And they have such good depth that I think they can manage that. So I think they'll be fine. I don't think it'll be hitting a wall that keeps Tennessee from peaking. The depth is there. But it is a matter of just you clicking at the right time. And gosh, we saw a team years ago, was it Loyola Chicago, that made the Final Four and knocked Tennessee? Yeah. I mean, you just never know. And that's one of the things I love about college basketball.
Yeah, and now switching over, I got to ask you about in football. I think Josh Heupel is one of the elite quarterback coaches in the country. I noticed in the bowl game when Tennessee was without Hendon Hooker, who I thought was, he and Bryce Young, that game, October 15th in Knoxville, when we start to look back on it in the years to come, as far as a great quarterback duel and a great game that mattered. You remember the 1969 Archie Manning versus Scott Hunter game, 33-32, Alabama won. Both coaches were mad about the defense, but offensively, that was the first primetime SEC college football game, or maybe college football game, period. I can remember where I was when I was watching it and who I was with. And that was a long time ago. But that game was huge. Hendon Hooker, Bryce Young. But the way Joe Milton III looked in the bowl game, he's got a cannon for an arm. But somebody, and that's got to be Josh Heupel and the Tennessee coaches, have gotten to him. He looked more under control, and Tennessee dominated the ACC champion Clemson 28-14 in the Orange Bowl. How much better can Joe Milton be? Of course, he started at Michigan, came to Tennessee, lost his job. This guy must be a hard, tough guy with a lot of courage, because he could have left just like Stetson Bennett, but he stayed, and now he's got this year ahead of him. Some great things I think can happen.
Well, he can improve quite a bit, and there are two basic areas for that. First of all, he's got to improve his touch. You can't throw a 10-yard pass 118 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That's one of the things he has had to learn or tried to learn. Secondly, and another part of that is if you saw the long balls against Clemson, he wasn't overthrowing about 10 yards. He was putting more air on the ball to give receivers a chance. And look, there were a couple of them that were incomplete, but at least they had a chance to be caught. Here's the other part of that, and this is the unknown: his decision making. When he was the starter for Tennessee the year before last, his decision making wasn't that great. There would be a receiver he would throw somewhere else.
Yeah.
You very seldom saw a Tennessee receiver running open that Hendon Hooker didn't find him and hit him. So that's going to be the challenge for Milton: making the right decision, going to the right guy, throwing to the open receiver, which basically is seeing the field. So if he can improve on his accuracy and his touch, and then see the field and make the right decisions, he's got a chance because he's got a great arm. We all know that. But I can't imagine him being better than Hooker or even as good as Hooker. Yeah. But if it's 90% of Hendon Hooker, then Tennessee's going to be a really good team.
What are you hearing about Hendon Hooker in his rehab and getting ready for playing in the NFL?
It's going well. But when you tear an ACL, I mean, that's typically an 8 to 10 month procedure unless you're Adrian Peterson. But yeah, I think it's going to be a while before he's not going to be able to really show what he can do. What'll have to happen is people have to draft him based on what they saw his last year at Tennessee. Now, we did talk to an NFL draft analyst who thinks Hooker's going to be a 3rd or a 4th round pick. I'm still baffled by this. A lot of scouts, including the one we talked to, like Will Levis more than Hooker because he's, I guess, physically he's bigger, has a little bit better arm. But man, I'm taking Hendon Hooker over Will Levis in a heartbeat. I don't care about all that. Well, I do care about if you're physically gifted. I get that, but I just don't think Levis is as good as Hooker. So, but as far as Hooker's development, hopefully it won't cost him in the draft where he drops to a 6th or 7th rounder. I don't think so. I think people saw enough out of him to realize he should be taken out.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of Chuma Okeke at Auburn, got hurt in the tournament against North Carolina, tore his knee up, and he was drafted by Orlando in the 1st round based on the future. That's in the stock market. That's buying a good stock at a discount. I would take Hendon Hooker my first pick because what sets him apart as a quarterback, when I watch him, and I'm not a coach, but watch a lot of football, he gets the ball where only his receiver can get it effectively. He does it most of the time, and he is mentally a very strong individual. And is he in divinity school or getting a master's or something? He's a very smart guy.
Yeah, he's I don't know exactly where he stands there. He's also 25 years old, so I think he made a doctorate. And he's a great young man. I'm so impressed with him. I remember interviewing him. The first interview that he gave was when they opened it up for media day before the 2021 season, and how mature he was when I talked with him. I was really impressed with him. Yeah, but I think he's a great young man. He'll be an asset to whatever NFL team.
Yeah, John Hartwell.
Hey, Rob, I want to go back to Jimmy's comments about about the coaching staff and the job that's been done there by Josh Heupel. And Jimmy, you may or may not know this. So Josh was with us for a year at Utah State. He was actually the offensive coordinator under Matt Wells there. And oh, by the way, what a lot of people don't know about Josh Heupel is he is a great, not only is he a talent developer, he has a great eye for talent too. He found a guy in Bakersfield, California, who had no other Division I offers by the name of Jordan Love, who, when they figure out what the Aaron Rodgers situation is at Green Bay, I'm telling you, Jordan Love is going to step in. He's got all the tools to be a very successful NFL quarterback. Jordan Love's offers out of high school, out of Bakersfield, Utah State, and Eastern Washington. So he's got an eye for talent. But I tell you the other thing, and I think I saw an article back this fall. One of the benefits that Josh has, a huge benefit that not many coaches have, the benefit of having his dad, Ken, around. Ken was a long-time successful small college coach, very analytical. I'll never forget his year he spent with us at Utah State. His dad was always on the sideline, never in the way, standing outside the box, but he would analyze everything he did. And I had a couple of conversations with Josh, and I said, hey, your dad's very engaged. He said, yeah, oh yeah, my dad can go, a week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks after a game, and he can go through and remember every play that I called. And he said, hey, he doesn't talk about the ones that worked. He asked me about the ones that didn't work and why he was calling those. What did he see? So that's a hidden benefit that Josh Heupel, and I've loved seeing his development at both UCF and Tennessee as a head coach. I got to visit with him at the National Football Foundation event in Vegas back in December. But his evolution as a coach and clearly his dad, Ken, is a heavy influence on him.
Yeah, I could see that with him. And here's the thing, too. A lot of people don't realize the incredible rebuilding job he had to do at Tennessee. I mean, this was a program, if you count the start of Pruitt's last year to whenever Heupel started the next August, he lost 45 players. There were 39 in the portal, 2 retired, and 4 were let out of their national letter of intent. And then when he came in, he didn't come in and say, you just wait till I get my players in here. He said, no, these are my players, and we're going to win with them, and we're not going to put a ceiling. And so he asked the players, he said, what's missing? What do y'all want around here? Well, there was camaraderie that was missing. There was a feeling of enjoyment. Playing the game of football is missing. He tried to make it fun. And players that dreaded going to practice, now all of a sudden they enjoyed going to practice because they enjoyed each other. But he comes across with a very positive influence with them, and with rare exception, and you'll like this one, Rob, with rare exception, that's Rodney Garner. Most of what you hear when a coach screams, it's encouragement. Rodney, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things these players need. They had been beaten down for a few years, hadn't had success. And every now and then you got to realize the difference in patting somebody on the back and kicking them in the butt. And Josh Heupel realized that.
Yeah, and he really does. To me, Tennessee football, 11-2. I mean, the win over Clemson, that's a big time win. And we all know that if we're in a 12-team playoff, Tennessee would have been in the college football playoff. And they played the way they did against Clemson. And again, that's a top 5 talent team in the country, and Tennessee just dominated them. I think their best days are ahead. And I'm with John. I don't know Josh Heupel, but my wife's cousin, works with him up there. He's a junior at Tennessee and drives the coaches' wives and stuff around on game day and gets to work around them, and has been around Coach Heupel and just loves him. And he's just he's from South Dakota, I think. Great pheasant hunting country up there. But cerebrally, I think the minute Tennessee hired him, you just look at him, he doesn't get phased, but he seems like he'd be a fun guy to play for, even when he's working you really, really hard. Jimmy, thanks so much for taking time to join us this morning. Before we let you go, let people know how they can follow you and keep up with what all is going up in Knoxville, because we got a lot of Vol fans that listen to Sidelines.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jimmy Hyams. By the way, Rob, I tweeted out a picture of me and my grandson yesterday, and it got like 30,000 views. So I appreciate that.
Wow.
You can follow us. I write a blog. You can go to 991thesportsanimal.com. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio. And if you're in the area, we're on from 3 to 7 Eastern, and you can listen to us on 99.1 FM 99.
Hey, I've got that app on my phone, and just listening when you're on again, we don't all get the newspaper like we used to. My dad at 94 hates that, and he still texts me wanting to know things. But whenever you're on, everything is organized like it is written, because again, you've written it. And when you say something, you've thought about it so much, and it carries a lot of weight. But look forward to having you on again here very soon. That is Jimmy Hyams up in Knoxville. John Hartwell and I will be right back after this quick commercial break, going into hour number 2 with Yancy Porter and Franz Beard on the Sidelines Monday college football, basketball, baseball blitz.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from peeled and done. Just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne back with John Hartwell. And great stuff as always when Jimmy Hyams joins us from up in Knoxville. And really, that was really insightful stuff. I didn't know Josh Heupel's dad was a coach, but I know Kirby Smart's dad was a coach down in I think Bainbridge, Georgia. It's a number of coaches whose dads were coaches and influenced them coming up. I think it equips them with a lot of tools to be able to handle what happens day in and day out. And you know, John, from all your years as an AD and a deputy AD, what have you, you are a coach. And that's, I guess if someone said, give me your elevator speech, you're an athletic director. Okay, well, what's different about what you do versus all the 21 or 24 coaches that you have on staff?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a piece of advice I was given early in my career when someone asked me about, hey, why did you go into administration as opposed to coaching? And my answer to this is not original, but I think it's pretty spot on. Hey, as an administrator, your livelihood only indirectly depends on 18 to 22-year-olds. As a head coach, your livelihood directly depends on 18 to 22-year-olds. But, we've talked about how society has evolved, how sports is a microcosm of society, and the way that you, quote, motivate young men and women today who are student athletes at the collegiate level is much different than it used to be. Gone are the old school days of in some cases, dog cussing or running kids into the ground to make a point. And I'm glad that's gone. Mental health for your student athletes is really, really important. And, you don't want the tail wagging the dog. The pendulum in some cases swings back and forth. But, you've got to be able as a coach to establish discipline, to establish chemistry, to draw the line between being in shape and just running kids into the ground. And I think that's, again, you've got to know the X's and O's. You got to know how to recruit, but you've got to be, in some cases, a psychologist or a pop psychologist as much as you are an X's and O's person to be able to motivate the student athletes of today.
Yeah, and John, you talk about the mental part of it. Yeah, you can get up every morning at 4:30 or 5 and work these guys into the ground. And bottom line is, I like to work out, you like to work out, but there's got to be a purpose to it all. And you also know there's a big difference. Whereas when you and I were coming up until midway through my college days, the football players, most of them went home in the summer and got a job. They came back the first week of August and they had all the running tests and the fitness evaluations. And some of the guys would be in terrible shape. Some of them worked out all summer. A lot of them, I remember, they got jobs working in construction or working at a pulpwood mill, loading logs. And I mean, it came back really strong. And then you combine that with putting them in the weight room you saw some just gargantuan leaps in the strength, and guys like Tommy Agee from Maplesville, Alabama, one of the strongest football players in Auburn history. I think he could leg press 1,600 pounds or something on the machine. And I saw Tommy back in late August, and he still looks like he could play. And he has got an infectious personality, incredible drive. And he's the one who gave the great line at a scrimmage back in the summer of 1986 at Jordan-Hare Stadium. My friend, the late Mark Green from Inside the Auburn Tigers, was out there at practice, and they were working these guys really hard. And he got and said, look, you're going to play Auburn. You're going to have to play a full 60 because we ain't giving you anything. You're going to have to get down in the dirt to beat us. But, play in the full 60. And I love that. But, yeah, you got to find also, you're right, what motivates people. And I know you got to get going, but we'll talk right after the show. But, John, that is great insight. I think the coolest thing was hearing that story about Josh Heupel and his dad. I think that accounts for his temperament and his success, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And again, I've used the analogy of Phil Jackson on the show before, and obviously had great success as an NBA coach. You can't just take the same approach. And again, a lot of coaches used to do this. Take the same approach with every student athlete or every player on your team. You've got to know that that's part of your job, is to get to know them and to figure out which buttons to push. And they're not the same across the board. It's not a cookie cutter process. You've got to treat different kids different ways. It's not a matter of being preferential in your treatment or, having team favorites or coaches' pets or anything like that. It's determining what motivates, athletes and how you get the best out of them.
Yeah, absolutely does. John, great insight. Like I said, stay if you can, but I know you said you've got a meeting. We'll talk right after the show.
Thanks so much. Y'all have a great day.
All right, you too. All right, Yancy Porter checks in right now. Rebel Yell Hotline. Check them out Monday nights, 6 p.m. Sports 56 WHBQ. That is 6 p.m. Central. Also, Super Talk Mississippi. 26 years, Yancy from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, has been covering the Ole Miss Rebels, and unbelievable insight that he gives us. And Yancy, I'm going to start with addressing, first of all, I mean, I'm a huge Kermit Davis fan. Gordon Ford got me, to knowing about him in 1988 when he was at Idaho State, I think out in Moscow. And now they're struggling right now. I hate to see it. They had some unfortunate injuries. That's part of the game last year. What's going on with this team, and why isn't it working? Because Kermit Davis has always won in basketball. In Ole Miss, you've got a great venue to play at, the Pavilion. You've got facilities. You've got everything. But what is it that's missing, in your opinion?
Shooters. Very simple. Roster construction was probably off a little bit, went too heavy defense in the all season, and didn't sign enough shooters. Maybe the offensive system they're running right now, which is that half-court Bob Knight motion offense, when you don't have shooters in a big-time center, that system usually doesn't work. I think he's trying to fit a square peg in a round hole right now, and it's just not working.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. You look, there are 4 teams we just talked about with John Hartwell and Jimmy Hyams in the first hour. 4 teams in the SEC that have 1 win: Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU, and South Carolina. And South Carolina not too long ago was in the Final Four. LSU, we know the nightmare that they have had to deal with, and they're working their way out of that. But they got 1 win in the conference, but could be worse. They could have none. South Carolina, new coach, but Kermit Davis, I mean, his 16-year run at Middle Tennessee State had a lot of success. But you're right, you got an offense that you're trying to run without the right personnel. It ain't gonna change. It just, I hate to see it, and I hope he can somehow right the ship. But we know the patience of fans, and have to see what happens. If you had to guess, what do you think is going to happen if they end up 4-14 in the league with Ole Miss basketball?
I mean, you know how I feel about Kermit. I'm rooting for him as hard as I can. That's just not going to cut it. They're going to end up changing coaches. The difference
Yeah.
between Ole Miss and State and LSU and South Carolina or they've got new coaches this year. Ole Miss is on, he's on year 5. So,
Yeah.
in today's era, fans aren't that patient.
Yeah.
Attendance is down, and there'll probably be a change made if they don't turn it around.
Yeah. Well, I hope somehow he can turn it around, but they certainly got at Ole Miss. Look what Andy Kennedy did in his 12 years there. He averaged like 21 wins a year. And where's he now? At Southeast Louisiana?
UAB.
I mean, I'm sorry. No, UAB. John Hartwell was
doing
at
well
the game.
there.
No, I know he's at UAB. That's right. The reason I've said that is I think John Hartwell went to see them play. I think it was Southeast or Northeast Louisiana. It was Northeast over in Ruston or Louisiana Tech last week. And Andy Kennedy, he knows him well. And I think Andy Kennedy's a great coach. I loved him on SEC Network, but he's a young guy from Louisville, Mississippi. He's got many, many years of coaching left ahead of him. And I like to say it's tough when you root for these people and when it's not working, and I hope a miracle can happen, but I don't know how it's going to happen. Shooters are so hard to come by, Yancy. I mean, who are the best shooters out there? How many John Morants are there out there in college basketball? There are not many.
Well, what you got to do is you got to push it up and down the court, right? Do what Auburn does. They don't have a lot of great shooters.
No.
But you get junk offensive rebounds and you put it back in the hole. You can't rely on this motion half-court offense where you are putting a premium on shooters and big-time scoring centers, which Ole Miss really doesn't have either.
Yeah, they're hard to come by. Switching over to football. I mean, good grief. Lane Kiffin, an elite quarterback coach, great play caller. You get Spencer Sanders. Now you got Walker Howard, the third 5-star quarterback out of Lafayette, Louisiana. Left LSU. I guess he's still a freshman coming in. That's the power of the Kiffin.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, the roster turnover all over the country now.
Yeah.
It's so hard to keep up with. I believe they've had 25 guys announced for the portal. 12 still haven't found a home. They've now set the 13 into the portal. I believe 6 scholarship guys graduated last year. So, I don't know. You just kind of wait for the end and just kind of wait for August to get here and see what your roster looks like. But, it's like this all over the country. It doesn't matter what school you're going to. I think Georgia's really the only one that you're not having any kind of movement. Alabama has a few, not many, maybe, 10 or so leave, maybe, get 4, 5, 6 in the portal. But it's crazy. It really is.
It is. In fact, you've got to have the crawl at the bottom of the TV screen just to keep up with your own school. It's it's that fast, and that's why I think this stuff will level out. And everything that we think that it's the end of the world as we know it. It doesn't happen. I mean, but we just adapt to it and we get some sort of a norm. I think the first step we've seen in the portal in terms of slowing down some of the insanity is we have 2 windows now, December 5th to January 18th, I believe. And there'll be another window in May when most schools wrap up their academic year at the end of spring semester. And then the next rule that I think provides a little bit of clarity and sanity, and I use those terms loosely because there's really no sanity with this stuff, that if you can transfer the first time, no problem, if you want to. And then that second transfer, they're apparently putting a lot of rules and clauses in there, because the first time you get any excuse, you can just go. And it used to be the first transfer, you had to sit out a year if it was within the conference in the SEC, unless the head coach was okay with it. You'd have to sit out 2 years if you transferred to another school within the SEC. And all that being said, you look at Hugh Freeze. He comes in, Auburn's like 56th in the nation in recruiting. We all know Brian Harsin. He didn't like strawberry ice cream, and he didn't like recruiting. And then Freeze comes in and gets them from 56 to 16th in 3 weeks. It's amazing. And then he's got the number 2 ranked class in the portal. But honestly, you can't keep up with them. I mean, you don't even know who your players are. And that right there, for the fans, the next step is, hey, we don't even know who these guys are. You know, in NBA basketball, you can transfer. You know, there's trades done during the season. You'll see a guy playing Thursday night for your team, and Monday night he's playing against you, and you're booing him. You go, wait a minute, that's what it's getting to. And I can think of 2 guys. JJ Pegues came from Oxford, went to Auburn, was never really used correctly. Comes back to Ole Miss, and then you got the defensive back that transferred, and they're both big-time contributors. But you mentioned Ole Miss, 25 guys have announced for the portal. 12 of them are still homeless. I'd like to see the numbers nationally of people that go into the portal that remain, permanently homeless without a school. Is it the new way, the social media way, the electronic way to say, I quit or I got cut without the embarrassment?
Well, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if Kiffin keeps some, all, or any of them. And then also, you got to remember, Rob, you get to transfer a second or a third or fourth time if you wish, if you graduated. So a lot of these kids are graduating in 3 years. Everybody likes to speed up the graduation process to get their degree so the kids can start working on a graduate degree, but really more or less for these coaches, so they've got the freedom to be able to cultivate their roster the way that they want. So, yes, you only get one free transfer into your graduate, but after your 3rd year, if you graduated, then you get to transfer again. Ole Miss has a player, Monty Montgomery. They just committed from Louisville, and he is a COVID 7th-year senior playing for his 5th team.
Wait, tell me about this guy. Say it again. This is unreal. 7th year playing. What's his name again?
Monty Montgomery. A good player, too. A linebacker out of Louisville. I mean, and so now you take into effect the COVID year, which is a free year. They were lax on a lot of these rules that they were not before to allow extra eligibility. You got 24, 25-year-old kids, or I should say grown young men, that are still playing college football. There's a couple 8th-year players that are playing this year. Oh, come on. So it's just, yeah. There's 8th-year players playing this year.
Here's a question I have. We all know that Jethro Bodine did the 6th grade 6 times, okay? Jethro would be into his early 30s, or more, into his 40s, and he would be a college player. This is incredible. 7th and 8th year guys. It just gets better every day. I mean, there's these stories.
Rob, I mean, you think about a 24, 25-year-old guy playing against an 18-year-old kid. There's a big difference. So, I mean, you can really angle yourself. I mean, last year, Ole Miss.
Hold that thought, because I come back. It goes back to the example Chuck Oliver gave about BYU with those 24-year-old guys been riding a mountain bike 2 years playing against an 18-year-old on the line of scrimmage. It gets tough. More after this.
Hewitt and Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne back with Yancy Porter. And Yancy, I was talking to Audrey during the break about these 7th and 8th year guys in college that are 25, 26 years old on their 4th or 5th team. Reminds me of we were down at the Orpheum downtown Memphis years ago, and Burt Reynolds was on stage, called Burt Reynolds, his life in film. And he was talking about when he played football at Florida State in the mid or late 50s. He said, we played Auburn and Alabama and schools like that. He goes, man, it was awful. He goes, they had these guys that had been over in the Korean War and the 82nd Airborne, paratroopers. And man, we were playing against them and they were in their mid 20s, 26 years old. Well, and also back in World War II. That's why Army was so good. So many of these older guys, listen, you've been in combat for 2 or 3 years. There's nothing about that. But now we got guys that because of the virus are getting these, they're there forever. There's, I want to stay. I'm identifying as a frog. Okay, stay another year. Okay, well, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Stay for 2 more years, And this is getting to be literally BSC, bat spit crazy, man. Ricky Ricardo just texted me from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, said, you got some splaining to do to me. Help me out, Yancy. Help me, please. Help me.
Well, look, you're seeing it. There's articles, like I said, there's multiple 8th-year seniors this year that will be playing. There's one of them that's now will be on his 6th school in 8 years.
Who is that? I got to get these names out there. I got to follow this guy on Twitter.
I'd have to.
Yancy, come on, man. This guy's going to be on Jeopardy. That's BR549. Call right now. It
really is. It's ridiculous what's going on with it. But like you said, I guess the NCAA doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So
no.
But yeah, it makes a big difference when you've got 24, 25-year-old player lining up against an 18, 19-year-old kid. So, that can really help you. Ole Miss last year, their center was 24 years old. He was from Miami. I believe he was on his 4th school in 6 years. I'm talking about basketball last year. Yeah. So, this is not unusual, but I would think after COVID in 2020, now 1, 2, 3. I don't know. We could have this go on for next year too, as well. There will be players that were freshmen like during COVID, and then if you had an injury or a red shirt, and on we go. So this, I guess, we're going to go through this again next recruiting cycle as well. So, it really is a new era. There's just all kind of, but. Back to Ole Miss, I'm interested to see what's going to happen to the 12 guys that have not found a new home. I'm interested what's going to happen around the country with these players. Does the university still keep them on the staff? On the roster, or do they allow them to just kind of flounder? I don't know what's going to happen with these players. There'll be studies done with this. Usually 4 years is when you really do an in-depth study, and they're going to have to start making some kind of rules. But, back to my other point, you can transfer a 2nd and 3rd time if you have graduated. So there is a lot of players that are going to be playing for 3, 4, 5 schools.
Yeah. Well, it started when we allowed people, if you had graduated, you could transfer somewhere else. And that was the first break in the dam. And now
which was a good rule. I like
that. Yeah, it was.
I thought that was a perfect rule.
Yes,
Just
I
like
agree.
that, and keep it at that.
Yeah, keep it at that because you've graduated. And the whole purpose of going to college is to enjoy the college experience and to get your degree. And now we've got 4 years because the portal became the official law of the land October 15th of 2018. And I'm not kidding. You really do need a crawl. It's like the football magazines that come out. Phil Steele, the professor, I think he comes out the latest of anybody. And
He's going to have to now.
you know,
That'd be
everybody, yeah, you've got, and they've got a
September.
web. Yeah, well, you're right, September. And they've got a website now. Every one of these football magazines also has an accompanying website, probably, so you can keep up with the changes on the roster. But we talked with one of our guests late last week. It may have been Bo Carter, who was former SID at Mississippi State and Big 12 office. It's a writer for the National Football Foundation. Talked about in the 30s and 40s, you had guys transferring from TCU to Texas A&M mid-season. That's how crazy it was back then. Because I said, you know, we've seen crazy cycles before in college football. What do you compare this to? And he brought that up. I don't know if you were familiar with it. I wasn't.
I was not.
But I figured it was. And then I referenced 1906 when 19 players died playing college football, and the Georgia governor and the state legislature convened in Atlanta at the state capitol, and they were debating whether to end college football. And the mother of the player who unfortunately was killed before all the safety measures were really what they are now in college football said that's the last thing he would have wanted. And they did continue to play, obviously, college football. But, man, we've been through some crazy stuff before. I think it's magnified now by social media, and we see it and we're more aware of it. But I just think the free market will calm it down. But it's going to be – I think right now we're getting close because the 7th and 8th year guys playing for 5 and 6 teams that might be the canary in the coal mine. Or one.
Well, like I said, you're going to get one more cycle of it minimum next year because 2020, right, your freshman year will not count.
Yeah.
And then you have 21, 22, 23, 24. So, you know, it could literally go for 2 more years if you redshirt it in 21 and 20 doesn't count.
Yeah.
So now you're talking about into 25. So,
yeah.
You know, we'll be talking about this for at least another year or 2 with these players that have, you know, playing in their 6th, 7th years of college with 4, 5, 6 different schools.
Yeah. You know what a trending statistic that you see in social media on Twitter is these NFL quarterbacks starting for their teams in the NFL playoffs are younger than XYZ number of college quarterbacks. And it's crazy. And by the way, how about that blast from the past of the old school of NFL football, the great Vikings, Bears, Packers games, that blizzard snowstorm up there in Buffalo. And man, Joe Burrow is just an incredible talent at quarterback. And as big as he is, he can run. He can do it all, but that was a fun one. But I just wonder, and I'm ready for these studies to come out. We have all these academic think tanks. I want to know this, the number of players who've entered the portal who are still orphans out there, not been picked up by anybody, because as we know, once you go into the portal, that school where you're currently on scholarship is not obligated to take you back. And we also know that a lot of these guys go into the portal after they discuss with their coaches their possibility of playing time going into the future. Where do you fit or not fit? That's what drives a lot of this. I don't think guys are just randomly going into the portal. So what used to be considered quitting or behind the scenes stuff is all out in the open for us to see. It's like Mark Twain said, if you like the law or you like sausage, please don't ever go to a sausage rendering plant or the halls of Congress.
Yeah, I would say it's about half and half. I mean, I think half of the portal now is NIL related to, and what NIL was meant to be was giving student athletes an opportunity to cut a commercial for a business, to sign autographs, to do things to make money on the side, that maybe their jersey sells well at an athletic store, and you get, some money from that or things. It wasn't meant to say, hey, you come to this school, you get paid X amount of dollars, but that's what it is now. So the money has gotten outrageous. We saw an example of that with Rashada over there in Florida, $13 million for a high school quarterback. Are you kidding me? An unproven quarterback? That is absolutely absurd. So, it's a mixture of different things. Playing time, coaches telling them that it'd be best for them to find a new school, NIL deals, maybe their position coach left, as we saw with Ole Miss, with Chris Partridge, and then a couple of the guys that he recruited, and Tasheen Johnson, David Igboson, they went in the portal because he was no longer there. There are a myriad of reasons for players going in the portal now.
Yeah, and with the money, I'm curious, $13.7 million for Rashada. I wonder how many starting quarterbacks in the NFL on playoff teams right now had smaller contracts when they signed as rookies. I bet it's quite a few. Yancy, look, we're going now to gonna head down to Gainesville with Franz Beard of GatorBaitMedia.com, but let people know how they can follow you and what are you talking about tonight on the Rebel Yell Hotline.
Yeah, we're going to have a couple former Ole Miss players on, a couple current Ole Miss players highlighted by Matt Corral. We're going to have him on tonight and kind of tell where he's at with his injury and getting back on the field again. And that will be on from 6 to 7 like we are every Monday night. You can follow me at Yancy Porter, and it's the Rebel Yell Hotline. So that's all.
Looking forward to hearing from Matt Corral. I will be listening on the radio tonight, Sports 56 and Super Talk Mississippi. Yancy, thanks so much. Have a blessed day, and let's talk later in the week.
You too. Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right. You too. All right. Franz Beard, we referenced just now, the situation at Ole Miss. At Florida with a $13.6 million.
13.8.
13.8. He's gone. And I'm serious. Think about how many quarterbacks starting in the NFL right now had less contract money there when they signed with as a rookie in the NFL. I mean, we all know that Sam, quarterback out of Oklahoma, back in
Sam Bradford.
Sam Bradford, great Heisman Trophy winner, signed for $78 million out of when he was a rookie coming out of Oklahoma. $78 million. That was in April of 2010. The next year when Cam Newton came out, they put that new rule in, and Cam Newton is the number one draft pick, signed a contract for only, that's a relative term, $22 million. And after 3 or 4 years, he could renegotiate that. But man, the money that we're talking about, you referenced, we're going to need some of these big things to blow up. Well, you got what you were asking for, and me too, because I can't stand it. I mean, we got to deal with it, but I'm just it's fundamentally against everything I've ever been taught to pay people before they've done the job.
Well, you're absolutely correct in that the kid has never thrown a football in a college game. He's never taken a snap. He's never run out on a field when you got 90,000, 100,000 people screaming that, urging their defensive linemen to grab you one by one leg, the other by the other one, and then holler, make a wish between the two of them. He's never done that. And it's going to be some real comeuppance. Very, very few kids can step right into a college quarterback situation and be ready. Bryce Young, perfect example. Comes to Alabama, all the hype and everything like that, and it was evident from day one he wasn't ready his freshman year. Mac Jones ends up being a Heisman finalist. Mac Jones was ready because Mac Jones had been there and done that.
Yeah.
But you're talking about Bryce Young, The best college football player in the country in 2022, forget who won the Heisman, the best football player was Bryce Young. Second best football player was Brock Bowers there at Alabama, and he's only a sophomore. But you look at this, the money was insane. And I just sent you a text, what I wrote today.
Absolutely.
The adults are to blame here. Rashada certainly, he's got to take a certain amount of accountability here and responsibility. He's got to say, he should have said, I want to be a Gator. He didn't, which tells us that the NIL money was more important to him than where he's going to school. Now, I know this for a fact. He had a counter offer of $1 million a year, and he had a month to shop it before he got his release. And there's not $1 million out there. He's going to end up at Washington, probably going to end up with an NIL deal worth $250,000 a year, or maybe $500,000 if he's really lucky. Arizona State wants him. They got less money than Washington. Arizona wants him. They got less money than Arizona State. A whole bunch of people out there who want him. Cal wants him. They have no money whatsoever. They're in a state where you pay, when he gets his NIL money, if he goes in California and lives in California, guess what? He's going to pay 13% income tax, state income tax, on top of the 37%. These kids don't realize, okay, you get the big contract. Guess what? You are automatically in the 37% income tax bracket. And of course, we got FICA and all this stuff. So you're going to take home only about 45 cents on the dollar as it is. And you go to California, you lose another 13%. So, if he stays in California, which they're saying, oh, he could go to Cal. I hope he's not that stupid, but then again, I look at what the people advising him are doing, and quite frankly, he could end up there. People who don't have his best interests in mind are pushing him, and he's willing to be pushed, and that's where the problem is.
Yeah, and I like what you just said. I read your one final pithy thought. Great stuff. And folks, you need to subscribe to GatorbaitMedia.com. Buddy Martin, Franz Beard, Ben Troop. They also have the Buddy Martin Show Monday through Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. You're going to get this kind of investigative journalism, great content always. But you're right. The adults let him down. He had a month to shop that $1 million a year counter offer. He got nothing. He is too embarrassed, and his people who are just sucking the lifeblood out of him are too embarrassed to admit it. That's why I'm telling you the free market is already correcting this. More after this quick break on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Franz Beard, GatorbaitMedia.com with me, Rob Browne, here on the Monday edition of Sidelines. And tell you what, we are here every Monday through Saturday, 2 hours a day, www.sidelines.live. And You can hear us live. If you missed the show, go to our website, usually an hour afterwards. You can hear the show and listen at your leisure at any time. Also, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta, and starting to build some radio stations on the Sidelines Southern Sports Network, like WLIV 104.7, Cookeville, Tennessee, up on the Cumberland Plateau in Middle Tennessee, and Kicks 96.3 down in Alexander City, Lake Martin, the Radio Alabama group, the great folks down there with Lee Perryman. And Franz, your commentary today, your one final pithy thought, you really nailed it when you broke down, you kicked in the window. He had a month to counter that offer, a month, $1 million offer. What is that telling you? There's not this line of people that wraps around for city blocks waiting to just dump money in 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids' laps. This myth, this big lie that's being pushed on the American sports public that NIL money is raining from the sky is purely a myth. In fact, I don't know. Among my successful friends, they're like, you're out of your mind if you think I'm contributing to that crap. They're going, I don't give that kind of money to my own children.
Well, let me put it this way. The stupidity starts with the people who, with the big egos, who are absolute amateurs, who offered him $13.8 million only to discover that, well, one of the people involved did have that money, but all of a sudden he realized it would be throwing it down a rat hole.
Yep.
And he realized he was way too far out over his skis. So, he pulls away, and then there's another person involved in here who ran his mouth incessantly and backed himself into a corner. So now you got a $13.8 million offer out here. And then you got the Rashadas who are being represented by two guys that are straight out of law school, who have never been agents, who have never done a deal in their lives. And they suddenly think, we have the next Johnny Unitas on our hands. We have the second coming of Joe Namath. We have the third coming of Joe Montana. We have Troy Aikman unleashed. Yeah. Well, it doesn't quite work out that way. Yeah. You got to still go to college. You still got to be able to run out there, and you got to face an Alabama that's going to be bringing in 5-star athletes who are just biding their time before they become all pros. You got to face up to guys from Georgia who come from these little bitty country towns, and they're the biggest things that ever happened out of there. And they're 6'3" and 320 pounds, and all they want to do is crush you.
Yeah.
He has no clue about that.
Yeah. Well, bottom line, Franz, I'm glad, and you were ahead of the crowd. And I know you listen to this show, I'm not a fan of it just because I understand when you dump money in people's laps. And you, who doesn't know this? Any adult knows it with children. I mean, if you give your children their allowance for nothing, money for nothing and your chicks for free, a pretty good song by Dire Straits in the mid 1980s. But
one of my favorite bands.
What do you think's going to happen? And hey, Sports Radio 104.7 up in Cookeville, Tennessee. Thanks for listening, being part of the Sidelines Southern Sports Network. And want to say this, I know Tennessee fans will look back fondly the 4 years they got out of Peyton Manning, and Florida fans, the 4 years they got out of Tim Tebow, and Ole Miss fans, the 4 years, and kind of a redshirt year, they got out of Eli Manning at Ole Miss. Okay. That was special. Let's not forget how special. You only go to college one time. Sometimes it's for a long time. We talked with Yancy Porter in the previous segment from the Rebel Yell Hotline. There are now some 7th and 8th years of college on their 5th and 6th teams because of the virus year. And it's just, they just, you say that, well, I want to stay another year. Okay. We don't want to hurt your feelings. I mean, again, Jethro Bodine would have been into his early 30s his freshman year at the rate he was going, because it took him 6 years to graduate the 6th grade. at Miss Potts Elementary School there in Beverly Hills. So, I mean, I remember as in the early 80s, how old was Billy Sims when he was a senior at Oklahoma? I mean,
he's 24.
Okay, 24, 25. Yeah. Okay. I mean, how old was Jefferson, the great defensive lineman in Fast Times at Ridgemont High School? I mean, we're getting to the point where
I was on the 11-year plan. Come on now.
okay, that's all right. But what I'm seeing is we're starting to see how stupid this NIL is and the panic of fan bases. Well, we've got to get this NIL. We got to give them, you can't let 17 and 18-year-olds drive the narrative. It's really not them that are doing it. It's the so-called adults in their lives that see them as a meal ticket. I'm always suspicious when you have to go and deal with a recruit and the story comes out in the media that says Franz Beard's people want to meet with the Florida coaches. Wait a minute. Who are they recruiting? Franz Beard or 15 or 20 other people? I mean, come on. I was born in the afternoon, but not this afternoon. That's why this thing is going to correct itself. I say this every day. But Franz, let's talk about the Florida Gators right now. I'm curious. They have everything you could want in the world: money, tradition, location, one of the top 2 or 3 talent-rich states in America, close to 400 Division I players a year coming out. But right now, I'm looking at Florida and I'm going, okay, 6-7. It was an ugly loss in the bowl game to Oregon State. And I see what's going on at Florida State. Now, Miami, I'll believe it when I see it. Number 3 or 4 ranked recruiting class. They're going to build a $100 million football-only facility. By the time they finish it, somebody else is going to come along with something better. But the state of Florida, is it because there are so many other schools that are Division I now? Other schools have always come into Florida to recruit. Put your finger on the top 1 or 2 things that are holding Florida football back.
It's called 10 years of bad coaching, not necessarily bad coaching, but bad recruiting. Muschamp was a good coach and a great defensive recruiter, but had no clue about offense. Jim McElwain was always too busy trying to be the cool kid at the high school who doesn't wear socks and drives a convertible. He was trying to convince everybody that was him, and he wasn't. He wasn't cool. I mean, my goodness, you're making $4 million a year and you can't get your teeth whitened. That's why I call him Old Yeller. Dan Mullen came to Gainesville thinking that you could apply the same recruiting that he was successful with at Mississippi State at Florida. And here's the difference. Mississippi State had no tradition. He could go out there and get a hungry kid who all of a sudden Starkville is a big city. Mississippi State's the biggest thing he's ever seen or known. You come to Gainesville and it's a different story. These kids here in the state of Florida, they've got, look at that. You got FSU, you got an 80,000 seat stadium. Miami, well, forget Miami. Miami, despite all the money, is going to be irrelevant. So is Florida State. And I can tell you why. They're in a league that they're going to be making $40 million a year. Florida is in a league where they're going to be making $100 million a year. Florida already has the facilities that FSU and Miami wish they had. We will get the NIL stuff sorted out. Billy Napier is going to build it from the bottom up. He's not coming in here with this idea that, okay, I'll bedazzle everybody with a great first year and, use all this stuff up. And then all of a sudden, year 2, my tank is empty, which is happening in a lot of places. A lot of schools do this. You look at what happened with Mel Tucker at Michigan State. he comes up there and all of a sudden he gets all the transfers in, has that great year. But where was he this year? Back to being Mel Tucker. He's a one and done is what I would call him. Billy's not going to do it that way. I would be surprised if today they don't announce that the big tackle Keonta Goodwin from Kentucky has enrolled at Florida. If kids came here and committed last night, the transfer portal closed today, okay? But if you were on a campus and you committed, you can enroll today. So I think that we'll see 2 or 3 kids enrolling today at Florida, which will give him about 10 transfers. He's got a class that even without Rashada is really, really good. He's got the most famous Mertz since Fred Nethel in Graham Mertz. And I've talked to a number of people who say, holy cow, this guy really can play. They've adjusted a couple things in his throwing motion, and all of a sudden the ball's coming out of his hand and he's throwing laser beams. Now, at Wisconsin, I look at, they had a guy named John Baruma or something like that, who was his quarterback's coach. He is now a $95,000 a year analyst at Iowa, which had the worst offense in America just about last year.
No question, it was the worst.
They had his 2 coordinators at Wisconsin. Joe Rudolph was the first one, who's a former offensive tackle. And the second one is Bobby Ingram, who never called plays, who never played quarterback, former wide receiver. You remember him at Penn State. Those are the people who've been coaching him. He's a guy that I believe is going to surprise people because he's been well coached for the first time in his life. I'm being told that everybody is saying, wait a second, how is it that you threw 26 interceptions at Wisconsin? You were completing passes to the other team. You don't throw it like a guy that does that. And everybody is saying he's far better than anything they anticipated. So we'll see. I thought he was going to be a good caretaker quarterback while they groomed Rashada. Yeah. Now, I'll throw one other thing at you here. There is this juicy rumor out there that DJ Lagway, who's going to be one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the 2024 class, is going to reclassify and be a Gator in the summer.
Really? Interesting. I thought you were going to say DJ Ugly from Clemson. Yeah. I can't ever get that one right. Say it. Say his name. Can you tell me what it is?
Ukulele.
Yeah, ukulele. That's right. I had a Coach Reed, my freshman teacher at Christian Brothers High School in Memphis, Queen Lilio Kulani. Nope. Russell Reed used to say Queen Leo Kakalani. And I love that one. But hey, that would be, as my son Max would always say, my youngest one still does, ginormous. I mean, that's ginormous. But we just got a few minutes left. And again, Franz, you give some of the most unknown to most people news every time you're on here. And that stuff about Jack Miller, the lack of coaching. I think about poor coaching. Scott Loeffler, offensive coordinator. I think he was with Tebow for a while at Florida. Then he was the offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach at Detroit when the Lions went 0-16 with Matthew Stafford. And then that guy shows up on the roster as Auburn's offensive coordinator in 2012. And I don't think it was a coincidence. There are no conspiracies. There's just no coincidences that Auburn had the worst team in 2012, went winless in the SEC since 1950 when they lost to Wofford the year before Shug Jordan came in and had his great run. Man, coaching matters, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. And Lefty's big qualification is he once was a suite mate with Tom Brady at Michigan.
Yeah, that was it.
Obviously that rubbed off on him and instantly made him qualified to be a really good coach. Now,
Yeah.
to his credit, he did get Bowling Green, Bowling for Dollars Green made it to a bowl game this year. I think it was the Cali Columbia Bowl or something like that, or maybe it was the Lima Peru Bowl. Then they went down there and played before 12 fans. And
yeah. Hey, Franz, by the way, what was the only bowl game prior to the Bahamas Bowl played on foreign soil up until then?
There's one up in Toronto.
Wait a minute. The first one.
Let's see. First one must have been in Mexico City.
The Rumba Bowl.
In Havana. That's right. In Havana.
Auburn 7, Villanova 7. Jack Meager. Batista was in charge, and Auburn players said it would put it intimidating there before the game. All the soldiers out there on horses and coming out there on the field. It was kind of a unusual atmosphere pregame, certainly.
Well, they played one in Toronto. Yeah. They played one in Toronto. I think they played one in Mexico City at one point in time as well.
Yeah, so there are more of them coming along. But let me say real quick, we most often will see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help people with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Don't just repeat what you see on social media. Trust, but verify. Franz, closing comments.
Closing comment is this. We need, and I know this is going to sound terrible, but we need some crash and burns in the NIL stuff to bring some sanity back to it so that adults, there are adults out there, two types of adults out there. The type that led Jalen Rashada, and then they're the type that actually know what they're doing. And hopefully the adults that know what they're doing will take over. Absolutely right. Hey, catch him, GatorBaitMedia.com, folks. Great content. Thanks to all of our guests. You're here Monday through Saturday, www.sidelines.live. Check us out live. Sync us in on your car, truck, boat, or SUV. Until then, God bless America. We are out of here. See you tomorrow.